Compton, California, a city where dreams and danger collide on every corner. For decades, it's been a breeding ground for culture, creativity, and crime. But behind the headlines and stereotypes are real stories of struggle and survival. Well, today's story is about Demario Wiggins, a Centennial High School football player, and his best friend, Tajay Sims, who walks a much darker path as an active gangbanger. While they both have hopes that Demario's success will one day pull them out their harsh realities, decisions made out of desperation could potentially turn their dreams into a nightmare.
Whole life been problematic. Niggas talking about he killed shit till we caught his ass, left him dead in traffic. Damn, that's tragic. Now pour your liquor, your dead homies, yeah, I piss on them niggas. All of my Glocks, they came with extensions. Walk in the tank and I'm feeling the tension. Oh man, yeah, I shoot at your granny house knowing that I am dead wrong. Opposition went against the tribe, man. That nigga caught him a headstone. That's that shit we be on. 223 point blank, get shit on. PFG, that's gang, my nigga. Real life movie, we really get with you feel me, my nigga? Good life, now fuck it, this hood life. All of my life I've been fighting. Right hook stinging like lightning. Dropping these bodies, we ducking indictments. Talking to feds and we doing them trifling. Dead odds, yeah, that's keeping me smiling. Hop inside of my 6'4" Impala. Under the seat, I'm keeping the chopper. Good life, now fuck it, this hood life. Good life, now fuck it, this hood life. We really about it, y'all really gon' see. We reppin' the tribe, that's PFG. All of my niggas, we come from the streets, living the diet, and that's what it be. Hood life, yeah. Hood life.
Demario was the younger of two brothers, born to Tawanda Hamilton, a fierce but loving single mother who worked long hours to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. His older brother Isaiah was Demario's first hero, a talented basketball player with dreams of one day making it to the league and playing pro. Isaiah was the rock to their small family, always looking out for Demario and of course helping their mother in any way he could. Well, everything changed when Demario was just 14. Isaiah would be unfortunately killed in a house fire. As I'm sure you can imagine, his death sent shockwaves through their family, and Tawanda, who had always been a pillar of strength, began to crumble under the weight of her grief. Not only that, but shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with a rare kidney disease. Despite the chaos at home, Demario found peace on the football field. From the moment he first put on his helmet, it was clear that he had a gift. His speed, strength, and agility made him a standout. Football became his sanctuary, a place where he could channel his pain and anger and also escape from the grief of his brother's absence and his mother's illness. Now, Tajay's story would be somewhat similar to Demario's in the sense that they both experienced traumatic loss early in life. As a matter of fact, Tajay's first few moments on Earth were filled with trauma, as his mother Lisa unfortunately passed away while giving birth, leaving him to be raised alone by his father, Marcus, who transformed his life from a violent past as a gang member to a respected community activist in the city of Compton. Marcus worked extremely hard to create programs and provide help for at-risk teens and really anybody in need. Now, even though he had his flaws, to Tajay, his father was a hero and a living testament of redemption. But the past always has a funny way of catching up to you. The Compton Vagos, a large street gang rumored to have ties to the Mexican Mafia, and the 12th Street Paru had been at war for years, with each side suffering multiple casualties. Well, Marcus, being a reputable leader from 12th Street, set up peace talks with the Vagos, and both sides agreed to a ceasefire, officially putting an end to a 16-year-old war. Now, to the community, this ceasefire was a victory for both sides, but to the Compton Sheriff's Department and the powers that be, Black and brown peace was bad for their business, and unfortunately for Marcus, he was one of the main organizers in the peace treaty, so he became target number one. When Tajay was only 11, his father Marcus was arrested for a murder that he was supposedly involved in years ago. Till this day, Marcus still claims his innocence, and members from 12th Street feel he was framed, but nonetheless, Tajay's world would be shattered. His stable life was ripped away as Marcus was sentenced to 35 years in prison, which at his age is all but a death sentence. As a result of that, Tajay was placed into the foster care system for a short time, but then eventually released to the care of his grandmother. Alright, so look, we gonna fast forward to Demario's sophomore year at Centennial High School, or what's often referred to as Blood Central. See, growing up in Compton and not being gang related, I mean, it's definitely possible, but going to a blood school while living in a Crip neighborhood, yeah, that makes things a little bit complicated. See, after Isaiah's death, Tawanda packed up what was left of their home and moved her and Demario to this nice 2-bedroom house. Well, their house is located in the area in Compton known as the Back Blocks, which is occupied by several different Compton Crip gangs. To Demario, that didn't matter though, because he was a student athlete and not gang related, but he would have to walk through the back blocks to get to school, and it wouldn't take long for them to notice that he was walking through their projects every day, going to Centennial, a blood school. Now, by this time, Tajay was already fully engulfed in gang life. He was an active member from 12th Street and looking to make a name for himself. Well, one day while in traffic, Tajay saw Demario running for his life. A few members from the back blocks was on his heels. Now, this was none of Tajay's business because Demario wasn't from the P. So Tajay really could have just kept it pushing, but him deciding to stop and help would change both of their lives forever. Demario was faced with a tough decision. Either join 12th Street and have some form of protection, or continue to get terrorized by the Compton Crips. Well, after weighing out his options, his decision was made, and the next day, he was in the backyard getting his put on. Now, we all know you're not supposed to try to win in no put on, but I guess Demario didn't know that, so he was back there fighting for his life. Man, they beat the sleeves off his ass, but surprisingly, he held his own. And at the end of the day, he was officially a member from 12th Street. But there was one problem. He also was a member of the Centennial High School football team, and it wouldn't be long before the two worlds started to collide. There were high expectations for Demario coming into his sophomore season. He was one of the only freshmen that played on varsity the year before, so of course the coaches were expecting him to have a huge impact. He spent his whole summer in the gym, working on his balance and trying to add on a little bit of size. By the time the season started, he looked like a totally different player than he was his freshman year. In the first 2 games of the season, he was able to make several big plays on special teams, returning kicks and punts. And then when they gave him the ball out the backfield, he had some success there as well. The future was looking very bright for Demario, but as I mentioned before, his involvement with 12th Street would begin to interfere with his performance on the field. Tajay and Demario grew super close. Now, I believe they bonded together through trauma, but yeah, they became like best friends. Unfortunately though, Demario picked up a bad habit while hanging out with Tajay. The two would often skip class to smoke, and if they weren't smoking, they was probably sipping lean, which in my opinion negatively affected Demario the most when it came time to perform on the field. Jumping ahead to their junior year of high school, all the buzz surrounding Demario had basically died down. After a piss-poor sophomore season, the coaches at Centennial seemed to have moved on from him and placed their attention elsewhere. Not only that, they even stopped allowing him to suit up and play varsity, and instead they placed him on the JV team. This was a huge blow to Demario's confidence, and in his mind, he felt like playing JV was pointless. So after only 3 games, he quit the team altogether. Now, it was the total opposite for Tajay. Yeah, the buzz surrounding his name in Compton was at an all-time high. An incident at a skating rink turned deadly, and unfortunately, a beloved member from 12th Street lost his life. Now, this wasn't just any member. Nah, he was a real trophy from the B team. And not only that, he was also one of Tajay's closest friends. And to make matters worse, the Volusia Block Crip took responsibility for the shooting. And with them being located in the back blocks, yeah, that pretty much meant it was wartime for every Crip set over there. 12th Street held the candlelight vigil for their fallen member, and several other Pyru hoods came out to pay their respect. Well, shortly after everyone left, the memorial that they set up was destroyed, and members from Volusia Block recorded it and posted it online. Now, of course, Tajay responded with a message of his own, seemingly letting everybody know that he was out for revenge. About a week or so later, one punch from 211 Pyru and Tajay found themselves deep in the back blocks looking for anybody from that side with the reputation. Once they found their target, the play was in motion. See, Tajay was supposed to hop out, do his shit, and then one punch would pick him up at the end of the corner. With the Compton Sheriff's substation only a few blocks away, they'd have to be quick, but they didn't know just how prepared the sheriff actually were. Yeah, the sheriff set up several command posts all throughout the back hoods because they knew 12th Street would be seeking retaliation. So just as soon as Tajay started to let off shots, police cruisers were already pulling up to the scene. Rather than try to make it back to the car, Tajay decided to try to escape on foot. For the next hour or so, the sheriff had the entire neighborhood shut down, but they weren't able to find him. Well, that's when they brought out the K9s, and within a matter of minutes, they would find Tajay hiding in the dumpster. Demario sat in his bedroom, staring at his phone. News traveled fast through the streets of Compton. Everyone knew Tajay was the one who let off the shots, so that meant the war was officially underway. For the next few days, Demario didn't go to school. His mom, Tawanda, noticed something was off, but she didn't really have any strength to press him on it. Her health was declining, and she spent most of her days resting, hooked up to her dialysis machine in the living room. Well, one night, as Demario was on the game, he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Tawanda.
Look, I don't know what's going on, but I can tell it's something. I heard about that mess with Tajay, and I just hope you're not involved. Look, losing Isaiah almost broke me, and I couldn't handle losing you. So please don't let it come to that. Whatever you were involved in, please just walk away, son.
Later that night, Demario laid in his bed staring at the ceiling. His mother's words kept replaying in his head, but he knew he had nowhere to run. Since the first day Tajay and Demario met, they basically been glued at the hip. You'd rarely ever see one without the other. So that meant if the Crips couldn't get to Tajay, Demario was the next best thing. For the first time in about a week, Demario returned to Centennial. He was hoping that all the talk and rumors surrounding his name would have died down, but nah, it was the exact opposite. People were saying that he was the one driving the car when Tajay did the shooting, and some were even saying that he fled to Tijuana. You know, just a bunch of crazy rumors, but nonetheless, he was back. Now, before all this happened, football was the furthest thing from his mind. But after that talk with his moms, Demario felt like he needed to start working on an escape plan. So after first period, he went down to Coach Green's office to talk about rejoining the team. There were still a few games left in the season and he wanted to get back on the field, but nah, Coach wasn't having it. He told Demario that he shouldn't have quit in the first place, and he was wrong for giving up on his teammates like that. He said if Demario wanted any chance to play for the program again, it would have to be next year, and he would also have to raise his grades. Now, this definitely wasn't the response Demario was expecting. I mean, he just sat there dumbfounded, really not knowing what his next move was going to be. We've all heard stories about the men's LA County Jail and how treacherous it can be on the inside. Well, the juvenile hall isn't much better, especially for Tajay, considering what he was in there for. Luckily for him, though, he wasn't alone. There were several other Bloods being held at that same facility, so that meant Tajay would at least get head-up fades instead of getting packed out. Now, the tension between the Compton Bloods and Crips was already high, especially since the death of two active from 12th Street. Well, Tajay shooting Coleon sent things overboard. Instead of every Blood and Crip car kicking off a melee, they decided to just let Compton handle their own business. So that meant Tajay would have to line it up with several members from Volusia Block. Now, he was no stranger to squabbling. His pops Marcus was known for whooping ass back in the day. So of course, he made damn sure his son knew how to defend himself. Tajay had like 10 back-to-back fades lined up, and he did his thing for the first couple, but eventually fatigue started to set in, and well, yeah, it was all bad. He suffered some pretty serious bumps and bruises, but I'm afraid that was the least of his concern. The LA County District Attorney has had it out for Tajay's father Marcus since his days as a detective. As a matter of fact, he's the one that pushed for the murder case to be reopened, which sent Marcus back to prison. Well, now he's pushing for Tajay to be tried as an adult on his attempted first-degree murder case, and if convicted, he could face life in a state prison. Demario had his mind set on being able to rejoin the team, so when the head coach wouldn't allow it, he felt like there was really no point in going to school anymore. See, for a lot of kids, sports are the only reason they go to school in the first place, so when you take that away from them, they tend to go off the deep end. Well, Demario was no different. He started spending more time in the set than he did at school. Not only that, but his mom knew it was way too dangerous for him to be walking around, so she started allowing him to drive her car. What initially seemed like a good idea to keep him safe quickly turned into the complete opposite. One day, Demario and a few others caught Rampage from the back block slipping at a convenience store and almost beat his ass to death. Of course, Demario was driving when this happened, so since that moment, Tawanda's car has become associated with 12th Street, and not just to the enemies, but to the police as well. It became common for the Compton sheriff to randomly pull Demario over, and almost every time, one of his homies went to jail for a blower. Well, apparently the Crips had been following Demario, tracking his every move through the streets of Compton. Tawanda's car had become a target. Well, one day they spotted it in traffic, pulled up next to it, and aired it out, unfortunately killing everybody inside. Tajay's grandmother came through in a major way. she was able to secure a paid lawyer to help fight his case. Now, he wasn't no Johnny Cochran or anything like that, but they felt he was good enough to get the job done. Now, the goal wasn't to prove Tajay was innocent, but rather knock the charges down from attempted murder to maybe aggravated assault and have him charged as a minor. Since Tajay didn't have any priors, his lawyer was pretty confident he'd be able to get the job done, but there was one problem. Tajay couldn't stay out of trouble while he was in custody. Somehow, them young niggas managed to turn the juvenile hall into a gladiator school. And what makes things even crazier, the guards were the ones organizing it all. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that the LA Times even wrote a full article about it. Every day there was a new fight or stabbing, and of course Tajay was right in the middle of it all. Not only that, but he also got a few tattoos as well. It was beginning to look like Tajay had his mindset on being a crash out. Well, that was until he got a visit from his grandmother. See, Tajay's grandmother was really all he ever had growing up after his father went to prison. They developed an unbreakable bond, and she was really the most important person in his life. So it hurt to see how disappointed she was. Not only that, but she was also getting up in age and beginning to struggle with diabetes. During the visit, she scolded her grandson and told him the truth that he really didn't want to hear. She let him know that his choices not only affected him, but also her as well. And she reminded him that she didn't have much time left to keep trying to save him from himself. Her words seemed to really have gotten through to Tajay, but right before the end of the visit, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table and asked that he read it with an open heart and an open mind. Later that night, Tajay opened the letter and began to immediately get emotional. It was from his father, Marcus, whom he hadn't talked to in years. Tajay cut off all communication with his pops about 2 years into his sentence, and eventually Marcus stopped reaching out as well. I guess the word had gotten to his father about all the drama surrounding his son's name, so he decided to reach out again. And quite honestly, this may have been the perfect time. Tawanda sat in total disbelief as members from the Compton gang unit explained that her car was the intended target of the shooting that left an innocent family of 4 dead. She knew Demario had some involvement in the streets, but she had no idea his life was on the line. Demario was just as shocked as his mother. He knew had that been the correct car, there's no question he would have been dead. The detective on the case recommended that they leave the city at least until they can get the war under control. Tawanda took his advice, and by the end of that night, she had already found a new place for her and Demario to live. A 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment about 45 minutes away from Compton in Pasadena. That's where they relocated. Of course, Pasadena has its own gangs and politics, but if Demario just stayed out the way, he'd be good. Milton High was the new school that he'd be transferring to. It's very prestigious when it comes to academics, but sports, yeah, not so much. Besides, Demario was so far removed from football that he wouldn't be ready to play even if he could. It didn't take long for Demario to get adjusted at Milton. I mean, after just a few weeks, he had already found a new friend group and he seemed to be fitting in pretty well. Not only that, but he had also hooked up with one of the baddest girls at the school, Alexis Moore. See, Demario has always saw himself as a ladies' man, you know, a wannabe player, but when he met Alexis, all that went out the window. Even though they were complete opposites, the two bonded instantly and seemed to be the perfect match. See, Alexis was a good kid, never skipped school, never smoked before, none of that. Well, Demario was a good kid as well, but he had his vices, and it wouldn't be long before they started rubbing off on Alexis. Instead of going to her evening job after school, every couple days she would take off and meet Demario at the beach. They'd sit out there for hours, talk, smoke, argue, laugh, joke, and everything else. I mean, the two were in love, but there was one problem. Next year, Alexis would be leaving for college. Demario, on the other hand, hadn't planned that far ahead. He was just living in the moment and not really too concerned about his future. Senior year came and Demario decided to give football another shot. He hadn't played since basically his sophomore year, but he was still pretty confident that he can get out there and make some plays. Milton's football team was trash, and Demario didn't make it much better. He was out of shape from all the drinking and smoking, so the things that initially made him good, like his speed and athleticism, were completely gone. They'd only win 3 games the entire season, and at the end of it all, Demario didn't earn a single scholarship. So he just decided to follow Alexis and walk on to the team at San Jose State. He gained a little bit of attention from the scouts at San Jose State during his senior season in Milton, but like I said, he didn't perform well enough for them to offer him a scholarship. So when Demario walked onto the team, they had him rated as a 69 overall and the 4th running back on the roster. The team spring game would be his first real chance to prove to the coaches that he was a lot better than his ranking. But there was one problem. They never gave him a handoff out the backfield. The entire game he was lined up as slot receiver. And he did his thing. He was able to score a touchdown, finish the game with a few catches, but it was right then and there that he knew he was about to get redshirted. Over the course of his freshman year, Demario put in work. He never got to see the field on game days, so his practices were his game days. He was going hard on every rep and really making improvements. Midway through the team season, he moved up one slot to the 3rd string running back. Now he was hoping that he would finally get a chance to get on the field, but that never happened. Well, kicking off the next season, Demario had finally moved up to the 2nd string running back, and he got a new number. He'd also finally start getting reps in the game, but of course it came at receiver. Well, that was until the starting running back got injured, so that meant it was finally time for Demario to shine. The courtroom was empty. The only person that showed up in support of Tajay was his grandmother. Nobody from 12th Street, not even Demario. He just sat there, awaiting his sentence. His lawyer was able to put up a pretty decent fight, but in the end, he was still found guilty. But that was expected. Luckily though, the lawyer was able to convince the judge to charge Tajay as a juvenile and knock the charges down from attempted first-degree murder to just shooting at an inhabited dwelling. Leading up to the trial, Tajay was a menace in the juvenile hall. During a raid of his cell, COs found several weapons and a cell phone. That, on top of the constant fighting and misconduct with staff and other inmates, he landed himself in the maximum security pod. There, he spent the majority of his time alone, which forced him to actually sit down and reflect on the decisions that led to him being there in the first place. After receiving that letter from his pops, Tajay read it a few times before deciding if he should write back or not. Eventually, he decided to go ahead and respond to his father, and that eventually led to the two communicating back and forth and reestablishing the relationship that had been lost. In the end, Tajay received a 7-year sentence with the possibility of early release upon his 18th birthday, but that early release would be based upon his behavior and his rehabilitation progress. Tajay didn't flinch when he received his sentence. He just stood there, eyes straight forward with a blank expression on his face. His granny, however, let off a soft sigh of relief behind him. She was exhausted. The stress from all this had taken a toll on her, and as Tajay was being led out the courtroom, she began to break down in tears. While Tajay was away serving his sentence, Demario was completely dominating college football. Him deciding to redshirt his freshman year proved to be extremely beneficial because in only 7 games the following season, he was able to become one of the most talked about running backs in all of college football. For most athletes, the offseason is a time for rest and recovery, but for Demario, he was catching flights back and forth all across the country. It seemed like every school in the nation was showing interest and wanted him to be a part of their program, but all he was interested in was the bag. And if I'm being honest, I don't blame him. But after all the visits were over, it became time for Demario to make his decision. Now, growing up, he had always dreamed of playing for the Roll Tide in Alabama or the Ducks in Oregon, but in the end, he decided to stay at home and transfer to the Cal State Bears. Of course, a big bag of money came along with Demario's commitment, and of course, like any other kid would his age, he went shopping. The first place he went was to the dealership. The whole 2 years he was at San Jose State, he was using Alexis's car to get around, so it was finally time he got something of his own. He ended up getting a brand new BMW M5. You know, a nice mix of speed and luxury. I think it was a pretty good choice. Next, he and Alexis went shopping for clothes. I mean, she held him down when he didn't have anything, so it was only right he returned the favor. Purses, shoes, belts, glasses, you name it, she got it. Now, I think the most honorable thing he did with the money was getting his mom the proper health care she deserved. Demario was able to get her with a doctor that specializes in the disease that she has and also cover the money for a kidney transplant once the matching donor is found. Once the rush from his NIL check settled down, Demario started to tighten up and lock in on what really mattered: school and football. He knew that the money was cool, but it definitely wasn't the end goal. His dream was bigger than the designer belts and fast cars. Plus, the people that gave him the money would be looking for him to step in and perform right away. Now, at the beginning of camp, there was a little bit of confusion about who was going to be the starter. As you can see, they had Demario rated slightly higher than Javion Thomas, but the thing is, Javion was a senior who had already shown his loyalty to the program. Now, I was confused because why would they give Demario all that NIL money to come there and be a backup? But I guess the coaches decided to make their decision based on the results of camp. Throughout camp, Demario did his thing. He basically picked up right where he left off at San Jose State. He dominated each drill and he performed extremely well. At the end of camp, he was the clear favorite for the starting running back slot. If I'm being honest, I felt a bit sorry for Javion, but hey, this is a business and the coaches play the players to give the team the best chance to win. Demario's breakout sophomore season took the college football world by storm. He managed to take home just about every major award there was, and by the time it was all said and done, he was sitting front row at the Heisman ceremony. The race for the Heisman was extremely close. It seemed like every day there was a new frontrunner expected to take home the trophy. But when the winner was announced, it was Demario on stage behind the podium giving his acceptance speech. There was no time for rest after the ceremony. It seemed like every sports show and podcast in the country wanted a one-on-one sit-down with Demario. He had officially become the most talked about athlete in the country. While he was out busy on his press tour, his mom was back home conducting interviews with sports agents. It was official. Demario was going to the league. The NFL Draft Combine was the next big event on the schedule. Of course, Demario was invited, but no one knew for sure if he would actually participate. His agent felt that he had already proven himself to scouts, so there was really no need, but of course, Demario had plans of his own. The only drill he took part in was the 40-yard dash, and as a running back, that's by far the most important drill there is. A good time here could move you up a few slots, and a bad time could drop you down a few notches as well. Demario went out there and ran a 4.31, which was the fastest time for a running back in this year's draft. He was expected to run somewhere between a 4.35 and a 4.77, so he officially proved to NFL scouts that his speed was real. Draft night came, and that officially meant that all the hard work was complete. The only thing left to do was to sit back and hear his name get called. Demario hung out backstage in the green room with friends and family. You could tell he was a bit nervous, but of course that's understandable. A few teams that he spoke to at the combine gave him their word that he was their guy, but when the time came, they didn't draft him. Well, about halfway through the first round, his dream would finally come true as the Las Vegas Raiders officially selected him with the 13th overall pick.